recording. Okay. My glasses on so I can see. I never wore glasses my whole life until I got to a certain age. Then I have to use them for reading. It really stinks. It's hard getting old. All right, so 2.5, here we go. It's also called order of operations. But it's really for integers. And like I said, we're going to take everything we learned, adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, and we are going to put it all together. Sorry, hold on a second. Someone just came in. There you go. Okay, let's just go over. I know we've done it before, but let's just go over it again. Never do it enough. Okay, so the order of operations is what an acronym for PEM does. It just means we're going to do the parentheses first. So parentheses, or you can have a parentheses like this, parentheses first. Then you're going to do exponents. And then we're going to do multiply. Whoops, let me do a little dash in there. Multiply or divide, but whatever comes first. Whichever comes first. And then we're going to do add or subtract, whichever comes first. One note I want to add, parentheses makes all the difference when you do order of operations. So be very careful of your parentheses. So a real quick review on order of operations, and then we're going to start and warm up, and we're going to do wonderful work. Okay, so this is a warm up. This is about the parentheses. This is all stuff we've done before. Okay, so we're going to simplify. I'm going to write them down like I did before. These are little small ones. The first two is where parentheses makes all the difference. Be very, very careful with parentheses. So the first one says, in parentheses, -2 to the second power. That just means that we have -2 twice. And then we can multiply them. So -2 times -2 would be +4. And by doing what we just did here, we did our exponent. So parentheses is already simplified. We went to the exponent and we made it two multiplying parts and made it 4. Now, the next one does not say -2 to the 4th. I even wrote it sort of kind of out, so it sort of stays away from it, just to show you. It is saying -2 to the 4th. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. The negative is not to the 4th. The difference is parentheses, the whole thing was the second. This time, the only thing is to the 4th is a 2. The negative is just hanging out in front. So we know the answer is going to be negative, and we just multiply 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16. negative 16. And the last one, we don't have parentheses, so we're going to do exponents first. 3 times, okay, 6 to the second power means 6 times 6. There's 2 6s. And now I have all multiplying. So 3 times 6 is 18 times 6. And I don't know what that is, so we'll put it over here. 18 times 6. 8 times 6 is 48. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 4, which is 10. So the answer is 108. Okay, so I have to say I had a lot of problems with this section because I made some crazy problems. What do you see the problems I made up? Woo. Okay, so we're starting small, and then eventually we're gonna get a little bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and you'll see how great you guys do. Okay, so a whole big section to simplify. Okay, we're starting out with a fraction. And don't let fractions bother you. No big deal about fractions. We're gonna have a whole section on fractions, and you're gonna be the fraction king and queen by the time we're done. All right, so we do have parentheses. We gotta do parentheses first. So negative 25 is just gonna say negative 25. Nothing to simplify there. And then we're gonna simplify 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. Now, if you don't like looking at it as a fraction, you can always go to long division if that's what you prefer. It doesn't matter which one. But when you divide a negative divided by a negative makes a positive, so it's gonna be a positive answer. And 25 divided by 5 is 5. Okay, next one. Negative 14 plus 2 over negative 2 minus 1. Now, when you have a fraction, you want to use order of operations, but I always say do the numerator first, simplify the numerator, then simplify the denominator, and then find the answer. So we're going to simplify the numerator. So here's our integers, negative 14 plus 2. Well, they're different signs, so I subtract them, which is 12, but 14 is bigger, so it's going to be negative 12. And I'm going to simplify the denominator. Negative 2 minus 1 were the same signs, so I add them and keep the sign, so it would be negative 3. And again, I see a negative divided by a negative, that's going to be a positive. Even if you want to do this, you could go like this if you want, just to know that the answer is positive. That's fine. I do that a lot. And then 12 divided by 3 is 4. Any questions on those two? Just making sure everybody's in. No, everybody's still here. Awesome. All right, 3. A little bit longer. Negative 20 plus 40.
I have a question.
Sure.
On that second problem, I thought negative 14 plus 2 would be negative 12.
It is. I think you missed it. It was negative. This is what we had. We had negative. We had this. And I said, if you want to remind yourself the answer is positive because a negative divided by a negative is a positive, you can just make them a positive like that to remind yourself it's a positive answer. Okay.
Okay.
They were negative,
Sorry.
and then we changed them. Yeah. Yeah. That's fine. I love it. You're paying attention. I love it. I love questions. Awesome. Okay. So now this one, we have a parentheses with an exponent. So we got to do that first. So negative 20 plus 40 minus 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. And then we just have adding and subtracting. So we're going to do the first two. Negative 20 plus 40. So negative 20 plus 40, they're different signs, so I subtract them, which is 20. And I keep the sign of the bigger number, which is positive. So 20 minus 9, and the answer would be 11. I am just going to add that in my head, or subtract that in my head. 11. Good. Everybody looks like they're fine. Good. Okay, I'm turning to page 4. 2 times 5 minus 3 plus negative 4 minus 1. Okay, so parentheses first. So we're going to simplify that part. 2 times 5 minus 3 is 2. Now this one is parentheses 2, but I'm going to leave it in parentheses because it's simplified. It's just in parentheses because it's negative. Now I definitely have multiplying here, which should be next. I don't have exponents, so I'll go multiplying or dividing, whatever comes first. 2 times 2 is 4, plus negative 4 minus 1. So now all I have is adding and subtracting. Do that in order, whatever comes first. So 4 plus negative 4. Okay, so if we have 4 and we take negative 4 away, that's just 0. So I'm going to cross them out. I make 0. So my answer is just negative 1. You could also write 0 minus 1. Whichever way you like to do it. Some people like to cross them out. Some people just like to put 0. Five. We definitely have parentheses and we have exponents. So parentheses first. Well, they're all exponents. There's no simplifying in parentheses. They're all simplified. Like here, that's parentheses, but it's simplified. That's parentheses, but it's simplified. So basically, the parentheses is done. It's all simplified. So we're going to go right to the exponents. And so negative 6 is going to stay. I don't know why I put equal to minus 5 squared. 5 times 5 is 25. Plus negative 3 squared. So I'm just going to do an aside here. Negative 3 times negative 3, just so you can see it. So a negative times a negative is a positive, and 3 times 3 is 9. So that'd be 9. Sorry. Come on. Oh, I put a text box in. Didn't want that. Okay.
Would that be a positive point?
Whoops. Hold on one sec. Hold on. There it is. My eraser thing disappeared. Hey, go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, would it be a positive one? Yes, it would. Why? Tell me why. Tell me why.
Because it's an even number.
Yes. I was going to ask the same thing. I'm glad I couldn't find my eraser. I just sort of disappeared. I found it. Okay, so yes, negative to a 6th power. If it's an even exponent, it's going to be positive. If it's a negative to an odd exponent, it's negative, but it's positive. Very good. Very good. Okay, now we have adding and subtracting. So we're going to do this first. Okay, negative 6 minus 25. So they're both negative. So we're going to add them and keep them as negative. So 25 plus 6 is negative 31. Plus 9 plus 1. Then we're going to do negative 31 plus 9. They're opposite signs, so I'm going to subtract them and keep the negative sign. That would be negative 22 plus 1. And then now we can put them together. Negative 22 plus 1, opposite sign, subtract them, keep the sign the bigger number, negative 21.
So I did negative 31, but I did negative 31 plus 10. Instead
You
of
can-
like simplifying the first part and then just adding the plus 1 at the end.
Because they're both
Would that
positive,
work?
it didn't work
I'm
this
sorry,
time.
would that work for like other problems though?
No, you gotta be really careful.
Okay.
Yeah, for this one, yes, because they're both were added. But be really, really careful. Yeah, just be careful with that. Yeah. Good question too. 6. Okay, so I added something different. Absolute value. Haven't done that in a while. Now, absolute value is a form of parentheses, it's just an absolute value. So that is a parentheses. So we want to simplify that first. This is already simplified. It is in parentheses, but it's already simplified. But absolute value is not simplified because we have an absolute value of -2. And the absolute value of -2 is just +2. The absolute value makes everything positive, everything inside of it positive. That is inside, -2 is inside of the absolute value bar, so that makes it positive. So we're going to do that first. That's our parentheses. And now it looks like we have multiplying because that came first. 3 times 2 is 6, minus 8 divided by 4. And this is where you got to be really, really careful because some of you are going to want to subtract 6 and -8 and you can't because dividing is sitting right there. That has to come before subtraction. So 6 minus 8 divided by 4 is 2. And then 6 minus 2 is 4. Looking for my phone. My brother actually sent me this really cool order of operation problem. And it's a big debate online. I think in my Bible or something that half the people have one answer and half the people have another answer. It's on my phone, but I don't have my phone. So if I get my phone by the end, we're going to look at it because it's a really interesting problem. Really interesting. And people are still debating about the answer. It's all about order of operations. 7. Okay, so we're going to get into a little bit more parentheses, different kinds of parentheses. So I'm using a bracket and a parentheses. It's still parentheses. So when you have two forms of parentheses and one's inside the other, you always work on the inside out. So we need to do this first. We're going to simplify, we're going to do that first, then we're going to simplify everything inside that bracket. And then we're going to continue the problem. So -2 is going to stay. -6 minus 2 times, okay, so -5 plus 1, subtract, keep the sign a bigger number. That would be -4 minus 1. Now we're still working in parentheses, and this again, be very careful. We're looking at this right here. This is multiplying. We got to multiply before we subtract. -2 bracket -6. Now be really careful here too. I see in my eyes, remember a minus is a negative, right? I see, I'm right down here, so you see, I see in my eyes -2 times -4. Everybody see that? You don't see 2 times -4. I see -2 times -4. That's what you want to see. So -2 times -4 is a +8. Any questions on that part? That's the area that a lot of students get a little bit wrong. Okay, then we're still in brackets. So -2. Now bracket, I'm going to change to parentheses because I'm going to simplify it. -6 plus 8, different signs. I subtract them. The answer is 2. 8 is positive, so it has to be 2 minus 1. I got 2 more steps. Now I have multiplying and subtracting. Multiplying comes first. -2 times 2 is -4 minus 1. Now they're both negative, so I'm going to add them to keep the sign. -4 plus 1, -4 plus -1, or -4 minus 1 is -5. Questions? Everybody doing well? Beautiful. I'm trying to go slow enough and trying to break it all down for you, because when you first see them, they look like, oh my gosh, that is crazy. Then if you do small steps at a time, you can do them. Okay, we're number 8. 8. Is the absolute value by straight lines. Okay, that's my numerator. This is my denominator. Looks hard. I'm just going to break it down piece by piece by piece. Now, some of you who are pretty good at this, and this is just a little bit of a review, and you're pretty good with these, you can simplify the top and the bottom at the same time. I'm going to simplify just the top, then simplify the bottom, and then put it together. But if you're really good at these, you could simplify the top. Like you could do, for instance, you could do the parentheses on top and the parentheses on the bottom at the same time. So feel free to do that. I'm going to show every little stuff though. Okay, so here we go. So numerator, I have absolute value, so I need to do that first. So absolute value, and I'm going to subtract them. 3 minus 12. So 12 minus 3 is 9, but 12 has a negative, so -9 times -2. And the denominator is actually, let's just do the same time. I'm going to do the same time with little steps. Okay, so we have our bracket. We're going to do the first step, is we're going to take and divide, because dividing becomes before multiplying. So dividing is first before multiplying. So 8 divided by 4 is 2 times 2 minus 6. So the first step was just, I did one thing in the parenthesis on top, I did one thing on the parenthesis on the bottom. And now the numerator, well, right over here in the room, absolute value of -9 is 9. So 9 times -2, that's just left in our numerator. Denominator, I'm going to do this parentheses here still. So 6. Now I'm going to simplify that, so I'm going to put it in parentheses. You can leave it in a bracket, but mostly all the time you're going to see parentheses. 2 times 2 is 4 minus 6. Okay, numerator, 9 times -2. That's a negative number, and 9 times 2 is 18. Numerator done, yay. And then denominator, we're going to multiply first. 6 times 4 is 24 minus 6. So we have one more step for the denominator, and then we're done. So -18 over, okay, 24 minus 6 is 18. 6, 24, yes. And then a -18 divided by 18 is just going to be a -1. Questions? Anything?
question. So on the 8 divided by 4 times 2, I multiplied 4 times 2 first before I divided it by 8.
Okay, so you did that, you got 1, right? Is that what you got when you did that way?
Yeah,
Yeah, because you gotta do dividing before multiplying. So it's multiplying or dividing whatever comes first. So that's how I got a 4 in the parentheses, and you got a 1 because you did the wrong order of operations. So it's not multiplying or dividing. You're not multiplying and then dividing. It's multiplying or dividing whatever comes first. So that's why you have to divide
you're
first. before
right.
multiplying.
You're right.
Now, just make sure you're right. That's all. But perfect example, if you do it wrong, you get the wrong answer, right? That's why it's so important to follow the order of operation. I love it. Question. Okay, 9. That's not what I want. Okay, here we go. Whoops, that's a -3. Let me rewrite that. I don't know if that. Jeez. Okay, we have a lot inside bracket. So first, we have to do this parentheses that's inside that bracket. So -3 bracket 24 divided by -3 times 4 minus, okay, now -5 minus 3. So same sign, so I'm going to add them and keep the sign. But the answer happens to be -8. So I want to keep it in parentheses because I got to do something here in a minute. And that's because the reason I kept it in parentheses because I see these 2 negative signs or 2 minus signs. I got to fix that. That's going to be the next step is fix that. -3 bracket 24 divided by -3 times 4. Now, a minus a negative, an opposite of a -8 is a +8. And now we're going to do our inside. And this is sort of like the last problem. See what came first? The dividing. So it's whatever comes first. So we have to divide this first. So 24 divided by -3. Let's see, 8 times 3 is 24. But I have a positive and negative. The negative, when you divide or multiply, wins. So it's a -8 times 4 plus 8 equals. And then we're going to go back and do our brackets again because I have this multiplying I have to do before I can add. 8 times 4 is 32.
Can you,
But a negative.
can
Go
you,
ahead.
can you tell me how you got the +8 one more time? I missed that.
Oh, yes. Let me change this. So when you see minus a -8, a negative or minus a negative, you can think of it 2 ways. If you take a minus of a negative, it means it's going to be a positive. I think of it though as opposite of -8. The opposite of -8 is +8. So 2 negatives become a positive. You can also do something like this. When 2 negatives come together, they make up a positive. Always think of it this way. You have 2 negative signs, you put them together, they become a positive. So they become a positive. You can actually do that if you want. Does that make sense? I think it makes way more sense in words. The opposite of a -8 is a +8. Did I answer your question? All right. Okay, -8 times 4 is -32 plus 8. Okay, hey, we're almost there. Okay, so now I'm going to simplify this. So I'm going to make it parentheses. Okay, so -32 plus 8 would be, okay, negative, I subtract 32 minus 8 is 24. Let me check in my head. 8, 9, 10, 12, 13. Yes, negative though, because negative plus a positive, negative is bigger, so it becomes negative. And then I can multiply them. I'll do it over here, -24 times -3. Well, two negatives multiplied because of positives, so be 12. 3 times 2 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So the answer would be positive 72. That's a good one. Okay, I have one more I want to do. And we're going to go on to something else. Oh yeah, I want to show you too, the last one. See how you start really long and it sort of like comes back down, like it can make like a V if you do it in the center. That's how you want the order of operations. It should be long and it's shorter and shorter and shorter to get to the answer at the end. Okay, 10. That's absolute value too. Try to make them long so they stand out. That's your absolute value. Okay, parentheses first. Our parentheses are absolute value, so we're going to simplify inside the absolute value. 10 minus 30, opposite sign, so I subtract. 30 minus 10 is 20, but 30 is a negative, so it'd be -20. Absolute value times -4 divided by -4. Now, my eyes go here, and in my mind, I'm saying 1, but that's not right because we have multiplying in front. So don't think you can skip and simplify this -4 divided by -4 first, because you're gonna have the wrong answer. You gotta make sure, this is a perfect example of what not to do. Don't just go there and simplify, oh, -4 divided by 4 is 1. That's not gonna work because it's not the right order of operations. It looks like it's right, but it's not. Okay, absolute value of 20, that's just positive 20 times -4 divided by -4. Okay, so you have to multiply that first. 20 times -4 is -80 divided by -4. And -80 divided by -4 is 20. Answer. Oh, yes, 20.
Maybe you could have did it that way. You still was gonna wind up with a 20, Miss Garrett.
Yeah, this one. It would be lucky, this one particularly, because you're both 4. After I did it, I'm like, oh, I could have got the answer, but don't do that. I'm telling you, don't. It's just a lucky thing that worked out. The numbers were the right numbers. Let's put it that way. Okay, so something we've been working on. We're going to evaluate each expression. So I'm going to give you an expression and tell you what your variable is equal to, and you're going to figure out the answer. So we have evaluate x squared and negative x squared when x equals -9. So I actually want you guys to sort of try it first. And see what you get. Be very, very careful with the negative one. I'm going to go grab my phone for that problem. So I want to do that last. So I'll be right back. Okay, I got the problem. Okay, so let's see how you did. So -9 squared, the first one, would be -9 times -9, which is 81. Now, those of you who don't have to show me this, I am fine with you going -9 squared equals 81. I am fine with that. Okay, because you're at that point that you can do that, do that. Now, the second one you have to be really careful with, because negative of -9 squared is negative of -9 times -9. So then we have -9. Well, we could, I'd rather do this. -9 times -1 is -9 times -9 is 81 positive, so much -81. That's only because it's negatives on the outside. Doing right?
I thought that whenever it was like a negative and then parentheses -9, I thought that would turn into a +9.
The
Or
difference
is
is
that just when you're doing something else?
yeah, the square. The square, you do for order of operation because we have a square. Here, let me erase what I just wrote. You're right. If I had minus a -9, that would be +9. But we have minus a -9 squared. So order of operation says you have to do this first. So negative of a -9 times -9 is just 81. Does that make sense? The exponent changed it.
Yeah.
That's what happened. That's what happened. The exponent changed it. Excellent. Good. I was waiting for a question on that one. Good. Okay. A squared plus B when A equals -6 and B equals -3. Okay, try that one. Okay, if you look up for a second, I wrote it two different ways because either you thought of it this way or you thought of it this way. It doesn't matter which way you thought of it as. But one of them should probably be what you wrote. And then we're going to do the exponent first. So -6 times -6 is 36 plus -3. Okay, they're opposite signs, so I'm going to subtract them and keep the sign the bigger number, and that should be 33.
Okay, so I'm confused because, all right, so up above on number one, where you put the -9 to the second, whatever, you got -81, but on the -6, you got +36.
Okay, the difference, here, I'll show you why. The difference is, well, look at the first one. See how we have -9 squared? See the purple? And that was -9 times -1, which is +81. But this one has this negative sign in the front. So this is +81, but this negative in the front, see how it hangs out in the front? That's going to hang out to the very end. So this one is -6 times -6, which definitely is 36. But if I had negative of a -6 squared, That would be a negative of a -6 times -6. And that's where you get your -36. So the difference between the two of them, especially number one, is that the first one here didn't have a negative in the front. So that meant it stayed positive. But the second one had that negative in the front. So this becomes positive, yes, but the negative was added to make it back to a negative.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Before you said the -6, if it never -6 squared, if it was in parentheses, it would be -6 times -6. But if it wasn't in parentheses, it would be -6 times 6. So when you said, replace A with -6, I thought it would be -6 times 6 because you didn't have it in parentheses.
Okay, so you're only allowed to replace, I like the questions a lot. You're only allowed to replace A. So I'm actually changing my color from that. Okay, so if I have A squared plus B, and A is -6, I'm only allowed to replace A. So you could put it in parentheses to help you see it. So A is -6. So this had to become -6 squared.
Okay, but if
Okay.
it's not in parentheses, wouldn't it be -6 times 6? Because you said only the
No.
first number would be negative.
No, they're both. Like, look up here where I put my little green star. So a -9 squared is -9 times -9, which makes it a positive 81. Let me do another problem. Let's look at it again, because this is probably one of the most confusing things. I agree. Okay, so let me go back to black. So let's do another problem. So let's say I want negative, nope, negative b squared plus 2, where b equals -1. Okay, I'm only allowed to replace b. So just as a visual, there's my b. So when I write this again, I'm going to put negative, here's my parentheses. I wrote everything but the b. Why? Because the b is going to become -1. And now you have to do this first. That's your exponent. So the negative just hangs around. This becomes negative. Actually, let me write this way instead of the way I did before. Let's try this. -1 times -1. But that's what something squared means, 2 of them, right? So if I have -1 squared, I really have -1 times -1. If I had 4 of them, it'd be 4 of them, etc. So if I think of it that way, which might be easier to see, then I have negative, this negative still hanging out. -1 times -1 is +1 plus 2. Okay, good. Now, negative of a 1 is -1 plus 2, which is just 1. You see how that negative worked? And see how this negative hangs around to the very, very end, because you're only simplifying the square part.
Okay, I got it.
Got it? Anybody else want to see another one? I'm more than happy to do more.
I would like to see another one.
You want to see another one? Yep, sure. Yeah, I'll do a fourth power, make it a little bit interesting. All right, so 5 minus y to the fourth when y is -2. So 5 stays minus. Now, I'm only allowed to replace the y. So I am going to replace the y with -2. So again, the 5 is going to stay. I got to do my exponent first. I got to do this -2. So let's look at this way. Negative 2 to the fourth means I have negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. So I did my exponent. Now I have this parenthesis I have to do. So negative 2 times negative 2, that's 4, times negative 2 is negative 8, times negative 2 is 16. Or you can think of it as a negative times a negative times a negative times a negative is a positive, and 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. 16. Now, even though the answer was a positive 16, I still have this minus in front. So really it's 5 minus 16, which means I'm going to subtract them and keep the sign the bigger number. So 16 minus 5 is 11, but 16 was negative. Even though it was positive in here, the minus changed it to a negative. I have negative 11.
Okay, can you go back to number 2 for a minute? Because I still
Yeah.
don't get it.
Sorry.
Okay. Because you said A is negative 6. You didn't put the negative 6 in parentheses. So negative 6 squared would be negative 6 times 6.
No, negative 6 squared is negative 6 twice. Negative 6. So it's right here in parentheses
But-
here.
It's in parentheses there, but you didn't put it when you said A equals negative 6. You just put negative 6. So how did you get parentheses around it? That's what I'm
Because
saying.
because that A is replacing with negative 6. So negative 6, A comes out like that, and negative 6 goes in its place. You don't need that. You do not need this in parentheses when you're replacing a number. You're never going to see it in parentheses. It's parentheses is implied because it's squared. Because you're only replacing A. So if I have, let's see, let me go back to my page.
I don't think anybody could hear you. We couldn't hear you.
You couldn't hear me? No? Okay.
I couldn't hear
Okay.
you.
Try a new page. I don't know why. Maybe hear me now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yes? Okay. Let's say X is negative 2, Y is negative 4. So let's say I have this expression, evaluate. X to the third plus Y squared. Okay, so X is negative 2. Just X, that 3 has to stay. So you're looking at this X is going to become, I'll put it right back in parentheses, negative 2 to the third. So all I could do is replace that negative 2 with X, or X with negative 2. That makes sense? How that happened? It doesn't matter this wasn't in parentheses. I'm just saying every X is negative 2. So it's just a direct
Okay.
substitution. If X is, yeah, if X is
Okay, I
equal
get it.
You get it? I'm gonna finish it. I'm gonna finish it anyway. Okay, so then plus now Y was negative 4. So I'm going to look at Y, and every Y has to be negative 4. So I'm just replacing the Y, the square stays. So that means Y is negative 4, and that is squared. And now I put a third, so we haven't done a third power yet, but a third power is negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. And the second power would be negative 4 times negative 4. Now, a negative 2 to a third power is going to, or any number, any negative to a third power is going to be negative, because negative 2 times negative 2 is 4 times negative 2 is going to be negative 8. Negative 8 times, I'm sorry, plus. Negative 4 times negative 4, that's going to be positive. The negative times negative is a positive, positive 16. And when I put it together, negative 8 plus 16 is going to be 8. It's good these questions are now, because when we get the next section is algebra. The longer section, 3-1, is all algebra. And yeah, you gotta be able to do this with a negative, so it's good. That's why I spend time on it now. So I love the questions, and I want you all to understand to keep asking me. How we doing? All right? Questions? Anybody? Okay, I have this problem, this viral problem that was on social media somewhere. I don't know where it came from, but it's my brother sent to me. He said, "What's the answer?" So I thought it was really appropriate. So we're going to show you. I want you all to try it and tell me what you think the answer is. So this is it. Evaluate 8 divided by 2 times 2 plus 2. That's it. So take a minute and see what you think the answer is. It looks like
It's
what you-
not, it's not too tricky, but I think I might know what it is, but I'm not gonna say it.
Okay, so these are the answers on social media. Half the people say the answer is 1, and half the people say the answer is 16. So I pretty much guess you got 1 or 16.
It's
Okay,
definitely
so-
about 16 if you do it with the order of operations.
Exactly. The answer is 16. Okay, exactly. By order of operations, the answer is 16. So I know what they're doing to get 1. So you have to do the parentheses first. So 8 divided by 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. We still need parentheses because we're multiplying. But remembering, we could put it, or you could do like this, 8 divided by 2 times 4, either or. But what they're doing is to get 1, this is the wrong way, by the way. They're multiplying that, and they're getting 8 divided by 8, which is 1, which is the wrong way. That's not the right order of operations. I think when you actually did something like this on one of the old problems we did. So you have to do dividing.
That was me earlier.
Yeah, multiplying or dividing, whatever comes first. So you have to do this first. 4 times 4, and the answer is 100% 16. Yeah, but half the people are saying the answer is 1, and half are saying 16, and it all came down to the order of operations, which I thought was really interesting. The timing my brother sent me that problem was like, wow, I'm going to show the class. It's pretty cool. Interesting, isn't it? Okay. 3-1.
I was thinking of a different way, but
Which
if
one?
you use the order operation, I thought the answer was 4, but then, like you said, using the order operations, that's how you get 16. But the way that I
Exactly.
used it, I wanted to get 4.
What did you do to get?
No, in my head, in my head.
Oh, in your head. In your head. Yeah. See, now looking at a problem in your head, I see a lot of people say 1. I definitely see how you can just say, oh yeah, the answer is 1. 8 divided by 8. But yeah, order of operations, big thing. The difference between